On today's video, we're going to look at the top 10 best places to be a redneck in Florida. These are practical places for rednecks to live with mediocre incomes. Cities that have access to outdoor activities. This is a real and practical list of places where you can live, real cities and metropolitan areas that are ideal for good redneckery. So we're not talking about small little towns where there's no jobs and opportunities. We're talking about places where a redneck can make a comfortable living, areas that are not too expensive, not too crowded, have access to good fishing, places that are not exactly trashy but are also not fancy, just kind of run-of-the-mill white places. If the cost of living is too high, then you won't have any money left over to jack up your truck. So there are places that have somewhat of a reasonable cost of living. Not exactly safe areas, but not too high on crime. Places that are just kind of above average on crime. Now, rednecks like a little bit of fun and activities. That means that these areas have to have some type of bars and nightlife and places where you can go out stunting in your pickup truck. Enough empty parking lots where you can at least have a place to park your truck with some neon lights underneath it. So we're talking about places that are fun, affordable, not too crazy, not too packed, but also not too soulless to where you'd have nowhere to show off your jacked up pickup truck. With easy access to things through outdoors, affordability, and of course medium crime rates, these places we're going to talk about today are ideal for rednecks to enjoy Florida but not have to spend too much money on housing, leave a little bit of money left over so you can jack up that F-350. Number one is Winter Haven, Florida. With mediocre jobs, you're going to guaranteed end up working at a tire shop or other auto repair place. That's about the only place there is to work out here. With affordable housing and mediocre job opportunities, Winter Haven was made for this list. Located in the heart of Polk County, Florida, there seems to be a truck for sale at every intersection here. There's enough growth and development here where there's rich people to fix their cars and work at their houses and stuff like that, but not so much that it starts to feel fancy. Besides the fact that being in the middle of nowhere in Central Florida, these houses here are never going to cost as much as houses along the beach, which means that the residents that move here can't be too dang fancy. There's plenty of bars, pubs, and breweries that are open late here, but even then there's always something going on at the Wawa if you don't want to pay for that front door ticket. Even on a Monday or Tuesday, the Barrel 239 is open till at least 2 in the morning. There's at least a dozen good places to catch a drink out here late at night. On top of that, there's about 20 lakes out here to fish. So if you like drinking, fishing, not getting paid enough to work, and living somewhere affordable in a mediocre place with just above average crime rate but not too bad, you can't go wrong with Winter Haven down there. Imagine driving through this road right here drunk. There's so many lights and shiny things. See, there's still buildings here from like the 1950s, so if you're driving down the road, you could just look at all these lights and imagine just swerving down the road here drunk with all these fancy lights and stuff to look at. It'd be the perfect place to drive under the influence. It'd be mesmerizing. Without a doubt, Winter Haven, Florida has to be one of the best places to indulge in redneckery in the entirety of the state of Florida. And whether you're looking to get your truck squatted, lifted, or whatever the crap you're doing to your truck, there's somebody out here that knows how to do it. Of course, a real man will do it himself. Regardless, there's plenty of watering holes out here to help you along the process. Always one right here next to the Publix, of course. Look at these fancy lights right here. Make sure you don't run into it at night. It'd be hard to hit it where it's at. It's kind of like back in the corner back there. Number two is Melbourne, Florida. Located close to the Sebastian Inlet, one of the best fishing spots in the entirety of the state of Florida. If you enjoy fishing and outdoor activities, you can't go wrong with Melbourne. Melbourne's not fancy. You can buy a hot dog out of back of somebody's van on Main Street on a Friday night. The police department's full of absolute brutes if you're looking for a good job that pays below average. The vibe's alright for a redneck. Melbourne's a slow-paced town. I mean, there's people out and about drunk at 2 in the morning, but there ain't too many of them. It seems like everybody that grew up here knows everybody that grew up here. It's the type of place where people actually settle in, find a group of alcoholics to hang out with, and live the rest of their life drinking, fishing, and hoping they don't get arrested for a DUI. But even then, you might as well just call an Uber. After all, it's never more than $7 or $8 since there's practically no jobs in this area. The abundance of people willing to give you a ride here is kind of astonishing. So one of the characteristics of these cities for today's video is places where the job market is horrible, that makes housing affordable and makes expectations low. You don't have to get a fancy job downtown. You can just work at a paper mill or something. You'll be hard pressed to find a worse job market than Melbourne in Florida, so it had to end up on today's list. It's not exactly trashy, but if you decide to wear your work boots to downtown on a Friday night, nobody would really give a crap. There's not much to be said about this town for fashion, for expectations, so nobody's going to really look at how trashy your outfit is. I Uber drove in Melbourne, Florida, got a few redneck passengers coming out of bars around 2 in the morning. They told me this is the most incredible place for somebody to live if they're a redneck. When I asked them what they liked about Melbourne, there really wasn't a specific thing. It was just the lack of other things. In fact, they call it Melbourne. It's just the lack of things that rednecks don't like that makes it attractive to rednecks. So it's not like there's good fishing, there's a few bars, there's a little bit of nightlife, there's no good jobs, rednecks are always into that. Like, it's got all the things rednecks would want to some degree, but it's like devoid of things rednecks don't like to a large degree. And it's kind of like that makes Melbourne that attractive, to where like you couldn't really pin it down to one particular thing. It's just kind of like collectively it's perfect for rednecks. Number 3 is Lehigh Acres, Florida. Located right outside of Fort Myers, there's practically nothing in Lehigh. On a Friday night, you can drive down to downtown Fort Myers with your giant jacked up pickup truck. I lived in an area called Buckingham on the west side of Lehigh. It's where the police officers live, rednecks, and people who have warrants. It's kind of like a really nice place to live if you're a redneck. Fort Myers has enough redneckery going on downtown where there's like biker bars. There's just lots of places where you can get drunk. Fort Myers is kind of not that busy during the off season. During the winter, it's kind of a madhouse. That's why it's not number 1 on our list today. I wouldn't really say Fort Myers. I mean, when we look at the Fort Myers area, Lehigh is really where it's at when it comes to redneckery. As of recently, it's about 70% Hispanic in Lehigh, and well, 30% rednecks are still left out there. There's plenty of canals to go bass fishing in Lehigh Acres, but you can also run on down to Fort Myers Beach, Estero, and enjoy fishing on the Gulf of Mexico. There's good bass, there's good snook, there's good tarpon, there's good redfish. If you like fishing, you can't go wrong with the Fort Myers area. Now, I lived here about 3 years ago, and back then, Lehigh Acres was undeveloped enough to where you could drive your ATV anywhere you wanted through Lehigh Acres. Like, literally, there was days where I would ride my ATV from Buckingham all the way to the east side. Now, today, Lehigh Acres has grown to the point where it's probably less places where you can drive your ATV. I think around Greenbrier, you could probably still get away with it, but Lehigh Acres is growing to the point where you can't just drive your ATV anywhere you want to. It was really cool that I got to live there before they built it up enough where you can probably still get away with it now, maybe during the weekends, but you'd have to be careful. You can ride your ATV all night. Nobody's going to call the cops. You can just do whatever the crap you want out there in Lehigh. It's a type of place where people have properties. There's still enough empty lots between houses. You can find a place in Lehigh that hasn't got overbuilt. Greenbrier and Buckingham are good little areas that are still underbuilt. Or if you go all the way to the east side of Lehigh, you can find properties that are just kind of not as overbuilt. And in those places, you might even be able to drive your ATV around the neighborhood without nobody saying nothing. Now, I lived in Buckingham, and back then, like I said, we were always on the ATVs. Probably a little harder to do that today because they've just built so many houses. I mean, there aren't places that have just as much areas to explore as Lehigh Acres. There's really just a bunch of nothing out there. And I'm pretty sure on the weekends, they still go out to the big mud holes off of Greenbrier and all that. So it's a type of place that still kind of feels country. You're outside of Fort Myers in South Florida. You can grow all types of tropical vegetables and plants out there. So there's a lot of great things to do in Lehigh Acres. I lived out there for like a year and a half, and it was pretty fun. The job market is horrendous, so that makes it a good qualifier for our list. Crime isn't too bad. I mean, it's not the safest place on earth, but if you're looking to fight somebody, there's always somebody willing to fight. Downtown Fort Myers has some good nightlife. Usually you can find bars open till about 2 in the morning. But to summarize Lehigh Acres, there's nobody out there. The job market sucks. It's affordable. There's always somebody looking for a fight. Plenty of canals for fishing. And of course, the fact that it's underdeveloped to this point for the most part. You could usually find a corner of Lehigh Acres where not enough people from Miami have moved in yet, and there's still a little peace and tranquility. Number 4 is Lakeland, Florida, the heart of Polk County. Now, Lakeland has a horrible job market. It's affordable. It has lakes, as the name would suggest, for fishing. It's kind of a mediocre place. It doesn't have anything stellar about it, kind of lackluster and, well, perfect for rednecks. You'll see squatted trucks running through here, people in work trucks wearing boots in downtown at night. Lots of little diners and places to eat that look like they're still stuck in the 50s. And, of course, good old Southern people who just can't get right. It meets all the criteria for today's video. It's above average crime rate, but not too much above average. It's kind of just like a bland, mediocre place with enough crime to keep you interested in the community, but not so much that it's scary. I've done Uber driving out here late at night, and there are places open till about 2 in the morning. Out of Florida's top 10 largest counties by population, Polk County has the lowest incomes. In fact, it's the largest concentration of urban poverty in Florida. So imagine that, a place that's urban but still poor, it's ideal for rednecks. You'll see plenty of jacked up F-350s driving through downtown at a high rate of speed. Lakeland's not exactly trashy, but it's, down to earth enough where you don't get those fancy folks who think their poop don't stink. It's a beautiful city with beautiful scenic areas, lots of lakes for fishing. This is a great area for bass fishing. If you're okay with mediocre salaries in a somewhat boring and bland city, then Lakeland should be right up your alley. Now, before we move on with today's list, I want to talk a little bit about the Florida Panhandle and small rural towns. See, for the most part, people today do need to live in somewhat of an urban core, and Florida has a lot of great redneck cities. In the case of the Florida Panhandle, there just aren't enough jobs up here. It's really not that interesting of a place. Now, I can't throw places like Miami, Sarasota, and Naples on today's list because they're just too urban, they're too crowded. I'm trying to compile a list of kind of like medium places that, they're not over the top like Miami, but then they're not like extremely dead. So there aren't really any small rural towns on our list. And I feel like by throwing small rural towns onto this list, it really wouldn't be a fair thing to do because those towns really don't offer the things that people need. People do need to live near large cities, but they want to live in cities that have, kind of a vibe that isn't, South Florida, expensive and elegant, and in the Florida Panhandle, it's very contrasty. So I really struggle with throwing the Florida Panhandle in here because it's mostly like a tourist destination. And even though it's in the South and it's like a Southern vibe, it's still a touristy vibe. And realistically, people aren't really moving to the Florida Panhandle like they are to kind of South and Central Florida. But there are places in South and Central Florida that are kind of just, a little bit more toned down, a little bit more chill. So if you're just looking for kind of like a bland city that's nice, isn't too trashy, isn't that expensive, then there are criteria for rednecks that will give you a city that's kind of like chill down the middle, not too much in one direction, not too much in the other. And I'm just trying to compile a list of cities here that like the average working class person can say, okay, I can move here. I know I'm not going to have great jobs. I know it's not going to be fancy and elegant, but I'm still going to be in Florida and get to enjoy a pace of life that's not too agitated, not too crowded. So I'm trying to come up with a list that's kind of more for the practical average day-to-day person of a place in Florida that you can enjoy living, that is just kind of not as refined as other places, not as expensive. And there really aren't lists like this on the internet. It's always the worst or the best. But when it comes to like down the middle, like average stuff, there really isn't too much on the internet out there. And that's kind of what I wanted to compile on today's video. Just a kind of down the middle list. Because not everything in Florida is beachy and touristy. There are kind of just like regular places, but there's not a lot of information about it. So that's kind of what I was also going for on today's video. Number 5 is Sebring, Florida in Highlands County. When it comes to run-of-the-mill, just bland redneck places, it's hard to beat Sebring. Now, Sebring used to have a reputation of having a lot of old people, and trust me, there's still plenty of old people here, but the town's working on becoming a more family-friendly place. The job market here is abysmal, and that's usually what rednecks are looking for. But the city has reshaped its history. I mean, it's known as a place for just affordable retirement, and it used to be a lot of just old people. But like I said, all that is changing. It's becoming more family oriented. There's still a lot of redneck things to do here. There's plenty of lakes. Car racing is huge out here. Over the last few years, I've noticed more families moving out here, so it definitely has like a family and homey type of vibe. Lots of work in agriculture as well. The job market's difficult, and that qualifies for today's video. Sebring is still affordable. It isn't overbuilt. In fact, it's kind of really struggling to keep up with the rest of Florida. But I think moving forward, there's good momentum in the right direction for Sebring. So if you're a redneck and just enjoy a nice little quiet town where you can drive a truck, got a boat with a trailer, go fishing, it's definitely perfect for rednecks. And it's moving in the right direction. It isn't exactly the most crimey area, but it also isn't hard to find somebody willing to engage in a conflict here. So it's the type of place that's just kind of chill. You can't really say much for the nightlife here. So if you like to drink here, you're going to be drinking alone or on a boat. There really isn't group redneckery out here. It's kind of more like individual or family redneckery, but you'll have to work that out among yourself. It's definitely not a nightlife type of place, but you'll see the type of redneckery out here that'll make you feel like, man, this place is perfect for me and my family. Now, as Sebring becomes a better city, it also attracts people looking for retirement, and those people can be a little fancy with their colorful shirts and all that. So it's not exactly the most rednecky place, but it has enough redneckery where you should be happy. You might see more colorful shirts than you want to see and more old people than you'd like, but there's still an element of redneckery here present. You also have a lot of transplants from Miami and Orlando, so the scene here is changing a little bit. That's why it's not number one on our list. But I mean, come on, any town that's wrapped around a lake had to make our list today. Number 6 is West Pasco County. This is the area north of Tampa. It's kind of suburban. You got Newport Richey, Holiday. This area of West Pasco ain't very fancy. It's kind of, well, blue-collar, working-class people who haven't had time to acclimate to the rising costs of housing these days. The job market here hasn't changed much at all. There's not too many jobs and opportunities, so this area is perfect for prime redneckery. Here in West Pasco, you're going to find an abysmal job market, affordable housing, kind of noticeable crime. Again, it's not extraordinarily high crime rate, but it's definitely just a little bit above average, which is exactly what rednecks like. You would think with the extraordinarily high overdose death rates in Pasco County that there wouldn't be so many watering holes, but there's plenty of places to buy or have somebody hand feed you drinks out here. So if you like drinking, you're never far from it in Pasco County, Florida. In fact, it seems like there's more places to buy drink out here than is logical. It just seems like on every corner there's a liquor store out here. I don't know how these people can drink so much, but somehow they manage to do it. There are so many decrepit and outdated neighborhoods out here where the housing styles have just fallen out of style. It's almost like if Hank Hill were to move to Florida, this is where he and his family would end up. It's just the type of neighborhoods that are outdated. There's really nothing fancy out here. Everything's kind of, well, post-dated, outdated, decrepit, run down, and barely holding on. Like, it's not quite gone to crap, but it's like on its way there. But let's just say you want to dive head first into redneckery, then there's a place called Moon Lake. Roads aren't paved. People are living in trailers with their horses. I mean, this is the type of place where the person sleeps in the barn and the horse sleeps inside the house. So if you really, really want to dive into deep redneckery, then there's Moon Lake. I mean, that's the beauty about West Pasco. I mean, you got the little urban area where there's liquor stores on every corner and stuff like that. And then there's Moon Lake where there's absolutely nothing. So if you want to really dig into your primitive side, this is the place for you. type of place where you can really indulge in all your redneckery indulgences and just kind of find a delicacy of redneckery. But if I still haven't sold you on West Pasco County, listen to this piece of analytical information. Hispanics and blacks in Pasco County, Florida, make more income than whites. That's right. The whites here are not at the top, they're at the bottom. If you're a redneck, this place is ideal for you and your family, or cousin or sister, whoever you're married to. There's no rules out here. There's no expectations. There's no jobs. You can just be who you are, making just enough money to get by. Pasco County, Florida. I ain't lying to you. Number 7 is Gulfgate Estates on the south side of Sarasota. When I moved to this metropolitan area, I usually thought that Sarasota is kind of a fancy city with the rich folks and all their fancy crap. But I discovered that there's a part of Sarasota where redneckery is alive and thriving. There's bars here that are open till like 2 or 3 in the morning on a weekday. Now, I Uber drive in this area, and after 2 in the morning, if you come out here, you're going to get some of the most wild and run down, just angry, drunk rednecks you've seen anywhere. When it comes to redneckery in an urban area, it's hard to beat what they got going on down here. Now, Sarasota is a diverse city, but down here, the only thing really happening is white people. Now, don't get me wrong, there's Italians and Germans and some Europeans and all that, but at the end of the day, the predominant redneckery down here is the number one demographical, analytical, informational thing going on. There's just nothing but pure redneckery going on down here. And then you can enjoy being close to Siesta Key, where there's other places where you can go drink. Now, this gives you an opportunity to get your hands on some Canadians and some Yankers down there and just folks that are enjoying the beach. So it's kind of a violent area where, like, the tourists know that by 2 in the morning they got to pack it up, because after 2 in the morning, it's nothing but pure local Florida rednecks. They like to fight. They like to throw up in the back seat of your Uber. And a lot of times they're so incoherent that they don't even know where the crap they're going late at night. When it comes to prime redneckery, Gulfgate Estates is the perfect place for somebody that wants to be a redneck yet still be close to civilization so they can have people to fight with. And then the issue is that there's nothing going on south of here. So during the weekends, rednecks from Nokomis, Venice, Vamo, all those rednecks from as far down as Inglewood and some even from as far down as Punta Gorda and Port Charlotte come all the way up here to get drunk during the weekend. So it's kind of like, it ain't just the rednecks that live here per se, but then the rednecks that come here during the weekend. A good portion of Sarasota's arrests happen down here. This area is definitely above average for crime. Now, while the Sarasota area has good jobs and incomes, these particular individuals are just making enough money so they can get drunk during the weekend. Then you're just a strong toe away from Sarasota, Siesta Key, where there's good fishing, there's more places to drink and get drunk. There's plenty of outdoor activities out here, so whether you enjoy boating, swimming, fishing, or fighting stupid tourists. I don't know if you guys know this, while Siesta Key is definitely a fine, clean, and elegant place during the daytime, the nightlife here on Siesta Key is kind of like if Nashville was on an island. It's definitely the George Wallen crowd down here playing that Thinking About Me and whiskey glasses and all that good country crap. So during the nighttime, the nightlife out here, it's definitely country and redneck. So if you want to live in an urban metropolitan area with good jobs, and that's kind of one of the downsides. That's why it's not towards the top of our list, because there are good jobs out here. And it's surprisingly affordable for being just a nice metropolitan area. So, reasonably to get access to all these waterways, it is kind of affordable. So, Gulfgate Estates, a little expensive. The job market here is a little bit too strong for redneckery, but somehow these folks are managing a way to turn this otherwise seemingly nice area into an absolute redneck wonderland. While Uber driving out here, I've even had tourists outright tell me those rednecks were trying to fight me. I kind of thought this was a nice, kind of beachy area, but I almost got beat up by some drunk local rednecks. And even the tourists are willing to point out that It's not quite as fancy as it might appear at first glance. But unfortunately, because some of these rednecks do have pretty good jobs in the Sarasota area, they're not always willing. Dang, that girl got a sunburn. They're not always willing to throw hands at the same rate as they would in Lakeland or other cities like Melbourne. But at least the notion is there, the intention that if they didn't have a job to get to in the morning, they'd stay up drinking and fighting with the other rednecks. So it's kind of one of those deals where, like, there's enough prosperity here where rednecks reconsider fighting people and stuff like that. So it's a present, you know what I mean? It's there, but it's also like, well, I do have to go to work tomorrow and can't have the wife bail me out again type of scenario. But other than that, I mean, pretty good. It's kind of like a nicer version of a redneck wonderland. Number 8 is Navar, Florida. It's our only contender out of the Florida Panhandle. You know, I wasn't going to include anything in the Florida Panhandle for today's video, but Navar kept, egging me on and reminding me how redneck it was. Now, Navar has actually grown quite a bit. It's actually got a fairly decent economy, so there are jobs out here, but they're not incredible jobs. So it's kind of like right at the breaking point where, like, yeah, there's jobs, but they're not that good. So it's ideal for our list. Navar is definitely pure redneckery at its finest. They have some of the best fishing in Florida. It snows there every once in a while. In fact, last time I was up there, it snowed for some reason. They have incredible barbecue, incredible fishing, some of the most beautiful beaches in Florida, mediocre job market. Now, these Florida rednecks do work hard up here, so there are jobs, but they're the type of jobs that a redneck would want, like renovating beach houses or roadside construction. It just seems like the jobs that are available up here are just enough for a redneck to buy himself a brand new GMC Sierra. It seems like road construction is never ending up here, and I don't know why rednecks like to live near areas that have road construction. They just simply do. They have one of the largest fishing piers probably in the world down there, which I have no idea whose idea it was to build this thing or how the crap they were able to afford to build this. But somehow, for some reason that I don't understand, they've literally built the largest freaking fishing pier in America down there. And they do have white sand. That's not snow, that's actual sand. So they do have some of the nicest sand possible. And there are some nice and elegant places along the beach here, but no matter how fancy they build stuff up here, they just can't shake the one and most notable thing about this place, the redneckery. So to summarize Navar, you have an incredibly large fishing pier, good fishing opportunities out there. You have growth and development, but it's still affordable. The types of jobs that rednecks would want. How does this place not make our list? Number 9 is Daytona. Car racing, water, beaches, fishing, above average crime rate, a horrible job market, somewhat affordable considering it's on a beach town after all. There's plenty of places for rednecks to choose from in the Daytona area. In fact, when I think about Daytona, the only thing that comes to my mind is a redneck riding a motorcycle with a meth pipe sticking out of his pocket or something. This really is redneck galore out here. I mean, if you really want a winning argument why Daytona needs to be on this list, you can drive your car on the beach. Or a dump truck if that's what you like to drive along the beach. It doesn't matter. This place is pure redneck spectacularism. Last time I stayed in Daytona, my hotel had a giant bathtub overlooking a construction site looking over the beach. What's more redneck than that? And of course, we know that the crime rate in Daytona is above average, so there's always some type of criminal activity to investigate. But you can't forget the most important thing. You can drive your dang vehicle on the beach. It's just the type of place that, despite the fact it's on the water, it feels like it's somewhere in West Virginia. Daytona has a horrendous job market. It's very seasonal based off of tourism. It hasn't grown like other places in Florida. It really has all the criteria to meet our list today. The crime rate is elevated, the jobs suck, and the people here are probably inbred. How does Daytona not end up on our list? Unfortunately, recently they have been cracking down on squatted trucks on the beach, and that takes away some points. That's why it's not higher on our video. I feel like ever since they started, enforcing the whole squatted truck on the beach thing, that kind of stripped away some of the redneckery. So They're trying to make it refined. They're trying to clean it up. But at the end of the day, no matter how hard they try, Daytona Beach is still Daytona Beach. What's the old saying? It's like trying to polish a turd. I mean, they're really trying to clean this place up, but no matter how hard they try, they just can't shake the redneckery and the informalities of the people that live and visit this place. And let me tell you, they are trying. They are really trying to shape the reputation of this place. They're trying to get rid of events that are redneck. They're trying to get rid of squatted trucks. Anything they can do to try to change the perception that this place has, it's still not working. No matter how hard they try, this place will always be trashy Daytona Beach. Number 10 is Jacksonville Beach Coastline. Yeah, the Jacksonville coast is still one of the most redneck places in Florida. Despite being directly on the water, it still has a noticeable crime rate. The jobs are actually pretty good here. In fact, there's actually military bases up here, which brings a lot of good jobs to the area. That means that a redneck here can afford a decent place, a jacked up truck, and well, Jacksonville doesn't have all the criterias of redneckery, but it does have the essence of redneckery, which is high crime rates, affordability, and of course, good old racial tensions. Affordability is an interesting aspect because Jacksonville is a beach city, but because of its high crime rate, it's always kind of been below par with other Florida cities. So yeah, Jacksonville has beaches. Yeah, they're beautiful beaches, but you can't forget that those beautiful beaches are always tainted with the crime and problems of a large metropolitan area. Now, I know a lot of you guys are at home probably scratching your heads wondering how the Jacksonville coastline could end up on today's video, but if you know this area, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, at the end of the day, Jacksonville is still probably the most southern of all of Florida's large cities. Rednecks love road construction and impressive highway systems. And when it comes to Florida, Jacksonville is practically the only city that has an actual functioning beltway like most other American cities. And when it comes to landscape, you know, like by footprint, it's the largest city in Florida by footprint as well. So all that makes Jacksonville kind of a never-ending wonderland of urban exploration with a twist of southern country. So if you know, you know. Jacksonville also has horrific traffic and road construction, which means that there's plenty of jobs building roads, which is probably the most redneck occupation you could have. Without a doubt, the Jacksonville area really does meet a lot of the criterias for today's video. I've Uber driven here at night and in the daytime, and I've noticed that the people here really are rednecks. You may not notice that at a glance, but if you spend enough time in the Jacksonville area, they're known for incredible barbecue, high crime rates. The job market isn't mediocre here. It's actually pretty good for Florida. I mean, if they had a horrible job market, then they would definitely have placed higher on our list. They do have the highest crime rate of any large urban core in Florida, and that makes it spectacular for redneck living. So Jacksonville definitely belongs on this list. And the coastline of Jacksonville, with all their good fishing, waterways, and despite the fact it's kind of bougie rednecky, it still has high crime rates. It kind of makes sense to put it on today's list. I hope you guys enjoyed my top 10 list of the best places for rednecks to live in Florida. And I hope you understood the concept of not the most redneck places in Florida, but the best places for rednecks to live in Florida. Jacksonville does have a really good income versus cost of living ratio, probably one of the best in Florida. And that means that it's affordable and easy living in a large metropolitan area. You can't say that about Orlando, Tampa, Miami, or Fort Lauderdale. That makes Jacksonville kind of unique and more ideal for redneck urban living. And why I didn't want to include so many small towns on today's list, just keep in mind that people do have to carve out an existence in a living. And, you know, moving to some small backwoods town isn't exactly practical for most people. So if you're just kind of like a run-of-the-mill white guy and you're looking for kind of a run-of-the-mill white city that's not too fancy, I hope today's list has been useful for you. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And if there's a place that you think should have made our list, let me know. I almost included the Golden Gate Estates in Naples, but it's getting too expensive. And I considered Okeechobee, Florida. What's more redneck than Okeechobee? But then again, is it really practical for a redneck to move to Okeechobee, considering that there's very limited jobs there? So all that paints the picture of today's list probably being the most ideal for rednecks moving to Florida.